Every persisting marriage is based on fear, said Peregrine. Fear is fundamental. You dig down in human nature, and what's at the bottom? Mean, spiteful, cruel, self-regarding fear. Whether it makes you put the boot in or whether it makes you cower. As for marriage, people simply settle into positions of domination and submission. Of course, they sometimes, quote-unquote, grow together or achieve a harmony, since you have to deal rationally with a source of terror in your life. I suspect there are awfully few happy marriages, really. Only people conceal their misery and their disappointment. How many happy couples do we know? All right, Sid and Rosemary, and they've got nice children, and they talk to each other. They never stop chattering. It's a kind of miracle. But do we really know? And how much longer will it last? I can't think of any others. Though I know several that look okay, only I happen to see behind the scenes. God, Charles, you were a wise man never to get married. You stayed free. Like Wilfred Dunning, never put on a collar and chain. Christ, I loathe women. But I can't get going on the other tack either. And you needn't blush and look coy. I never fancied you. I know what you got up to with Fritzy Idol. No, but I'd have had old Wilfred if he'd asked me. What did old Wilfred do for sex? No one ever knew. Perhaps he didn't have any. And if so, good on him. I still miss Wilfred. He was a sweet man. God, he inspired me. Getting drunk with old Wilfred was like... hell, what was it like? Did you know Lizzie Sherrow was living with Gilbert Opian? I think that's smart of both of them. I miss Wilfred too. Yeah, I heard about Lizzie. One of my minor motives in going to see Peregrine had been to find out if there was really any gossip going round about me and Lizzie, and if so, to scotch it. Apparently, Perry had heard nothing. So, you and Pamela... That's over, really. I mean, she still lives in the house, but we don't communicate. That's hell, Charles. Hell, like you don't know. To be tied to someone where all the sources of speech are fouled up and poisoned. Everything you say is wrong or vile. Christ, I'm a rotten picker. First that bitch Rosina, then a friend like Pam. Seen Rosina lately? No. Nor have I, but every time I turn on the television, there she is. That's a bloody curse. I suppose I loved her once. Or it was just that she made me feel like Mark Anthony. All I saw in Rosina's eyes was a reflection of myself. Then I saw the divorce court. The trouble with Rosina is she wants every man. Julius Caesar, Jesus Christ, Leonardo, Mozart, D.H. Lawrence, Jimmy Carter, you name him, she wants him. I suppose you wouldn't like to take Pam off my hands too, would you? No? Well, I can't convey to you what it's like. Like a fight with knives. And really, it's still going on. We haven't either of us got the sheer bloody strength to start arranging the divorce. Divorce proceedings are hell. You've got to think. You've got to decide. You've got to lie. I believe she's got another chap. I don't want to know. She goes away a lot. I only wish she didn't keep coming back. I suppose it's convenient. The sheer, endless, destructive, bloody spitefulness, the wanton breaking of all the little tentacles of tenderness and joy, all the little spontaneous nonsenses that connect one human being with another. I do try to communicate with her sometimes, and she says the most hurtful thing she can think of in reply. One's soul becomes numb with the endless blows. And of course, one becomes a sort of find oneself. That goes without saying. One becomes ingenious in evil. I've seen it in other cases. The spouse who feels guilty, even irrationally, is endlessly the victim of the whims of the other and can take no moral stand. That leads to mutual terrorism. And oh, when we still used to sleep together, lying awake at night and finding one's only consolation in imagining in detail how one would go downstairs and find a hatchet and smash one's partner's head in and mash it into a bloody pudding on the pillow. Ah, Charles, you know nothing of these marital joys. Have some more whiskey. Thanks. And how's the little girl? What's her name? Angela. This was Pamela's daughter by her previous marriage to Ginger Godwin. Oh, she's not so little now. Oh, she's at school. At least I suppose she is. She goes somewhere every day. I ignore her. She ignores me. We never got on. I don't think Pam sees her either. Pam is drunk a lot of the time now. It's an edifying scene. Oh, Charles, you're so lucky to have escaped bloody scot-free from all those frightful wounding traps, where one's blood flows and one yells with pain and watches oneself becoming a devil. You're so out of it all. God, you're clever. You're such a smooth, clean bugger, Charles. Your face is so clean and so smooth and pink, like a girl's. I bet you only shave once a month. And your hands are so clean. And your bloody nails are clean. Look at mine. And you've got away with everything scot-free. Scot-bloody-free. Yes, I must get on with getting the bloody divorce. But that means communicating with Pamela, and I can't. I can't face sitting down with her, or trying to sit down. We don't sit down anymore in each other's presence, and trying to make a rational plan to rid each other of each other. Maybe she doesn't want it anyway. It may suit her to live here and use this house as a base for whatever she's doing. I pay a pretty large amount into her bank every month. Can't she get a job or... Job? Pam? Laissez-moi rire. Pam was never an actress. She was a starlet. She can't do anything. She's lived on men all her life. She lived on Ginger and she lived on some other American fish before, and God knows who before that. Ginger still pays her fantastic sums in alimony, and of course she'll only consent to leave me if I agree to do the same. And do you know, I'm still paying alimony to Rosina, though she's earning 5 times what I am. Suis-je un homme ou une omelette? Sometimes I wonder. I was so bloody fed up and anxious to get rid of her, I signed everything. God, if you would only remove Pamela too. You're a lucky dog. Good, clean fun every time, and then you ditched them. Christ, you even got away from Clement. Why did I never learn? If you think I had a joyride with Clement, the trouble with you, Charles, is that basically you despise women, whereas I, in spite of some appearances to the contrary, do not. I don't despise women. I was in love with all Shakespeare's heroines before I was 12. But they don't exist, dear man. That's the point. They live in the never-never land of art, all tricked out in Shakespeare's wit and wisdom, and mock us from there, filling us with false hopes and empty dreams. The real thing is spite and lies and arguments about money. It might seem from this account that Perry was doing all the talking, and indeed by the end of the evening he was. He is endowed with an Irish flow of words, and when thoroughly drunk is difficult to interrupt. I was in any case in a mood to incite him rather than to talk myself. I was soothed by his eloquent lamentations, and I must confess rather cheered up by his troubles. I am afraid that I was pleased rather than otherwise that his second marriage had failed. I should have felt a certain chagrin had I been the involuntary cause of his being happy on deuxième noces. Such feelings do me no credit, but they are not uncommon ones. We were sitting in the rather large and handsome dining room of Peregrine's flat. A white tablecloth, much stained with wine, covered the table and looked as if it had been there for some time. Perry had moved his divan bed into this room and had even installed an electric kettle and an electric cooking ring, so as to be able to leave the rest of the flat to Pamela. The ring stood on a square of newspaper which was covered with food droppings. The charwoman had left after being insulted by Pam. The room was very dusty and smelt of burnt saucepans and dirty linen. However, as Perry said, the door could be closed and locked. Peregrine Arbelow has, as I think I said earlier, just about the largest face that I have ever seen on a human being. Though when he was young, in his playboy days, this did not prevent him from looking handsome. He has a large, round face, now rather fat and flabby, flamed by short, thick, chestnut brown curls. His large eyes have retained a look of innocence, or perhaps simply puzzlement. He is a big, stout man, always dressed, even in hot weather, in tweedy suits and waistcoats. He has a watch and chain. He speaks with a light touch of the accent of his native Ulster, which of course disappears absolutely on the stage, unlike Gilbert Opian's lisp. He is an excellent comic, though not as good as Wilfred, but then nobody is. I thought it was time to get off the dangerous topic of women. Been to Ireland lately? This always set Perry off and was a guaranteed subject changer. Ireland! There's another bitch. Christ, the Irish are stupid. As Pushkin said about the Poles, their history is and ought to be a disaster. At least the Poles suffer tragically. The Jews suffer intelligently, even wittily. The Irish suffer stupidly, like a bawling cow in a bog. I can't think how the English tolerate that island. There ought to have been a final solution years ago. Well, they did try. Cromwell, where are you now when we really need you? Belfast has been kicked to pieces. Nobody cares. The pain of it, Charles, the pain of it, the bloody suffering, the degradation, the bloody tit for tat. Why can't they let the thing stop somewhere, like Christ did? Could 100 saints save that island? Could 1,000? And I can't just forget it. It's like the shirt of what's his name. It's on me. It's crawling on my flesh. The only thing I get out of it is sometimes, in some moods, I can actually feel pleased that other people are worse off than me, that their beloved husband or son or wife has been shut down before their eyes, or that they've got to sit in a wheelchair for the rest of their life. That's how vile I am. I live Ireland, I breathe Ireland, and Christ, how I loathe it. I wish I were a bloody Scot. That's how bloody awful it is being Irish. I think I hate Ireland more than I hate the theatre, and that's saying something. At that moment, the door opened and Pamela put her head round it. Then, swinging on the door, she half stepped, half fell into the room and gazed at us glassily. She was wearing a coat and had evidently just come in. She was still handsome, with a lot of tumbling wavy grey hair, now rather bedraggled. Her smudged scarlet mouth turned down at the corners in an aggressive, unhappy sneer. She stared at me, screwing up her eyes, ignoring Perry. I said, "Hello, Pam." She turned round laboriously, still holding on to the door, and started to go out, then turned about, with her face wrinkled up in a pout and her lips working, and having assembled enough saliva in her mouth, spat onto the floor, leaned forward to inspect the spit, and reeled away, leaving the door open. Peregrine leaped to his feet, rushed to kick the door violently shut, then picked up his glass and hurled it into the fireplace. It failed to break. He ran round the table, literally foaming at the mouth, lifted it high with a cry of "Ah!", a sound like a spitting cat, only with the volume of a lion. I rose and took the glass out of his hand and put it on the table. He then walked slowly towards the door, looked at the place where Pamela had spat, tore a piece off one of the filthy newspapers, and carefully laid it over the spittle. Then he returned to his seat. "Drink up, Charles, dear chap. You aren't drinking. You're sober. Drink up." "You were saying about the theatre." "You were so right not to publish your plays. They were nothing, froth. But at least they didn't pretend to be anything else. Now you're offended. Vanity. Yes, I hate the theatre." Perry meant the London West End Theatre. Lies. Almost all art is lies. Hell itself it turns to favor and to prettiness. Muck. Real suffering is... Christ, I'm drunk. It's so different. Oh, Charles, if you could see my native city. And that spitting bitch. How can human beings live like that? How can they do it to each other? If we could only keep our mouths shut. Drama, tragedy belong to the stage, not to life. That's the trouble. It's the soul that's missing. All art disfigures life, misrepresents it. Theatre most of all, because it seems so like you see real walking and talking people. God, how is it when you turn on the radio you can always tell if it's an actor talking? It is the vulgarity. The theatre is the temple of vulgarity. It's a living proof that we don't want to talk about serious things and probably can't. Everything, the saddest, the most sacred, even the funniest, is turned into a vulgar trick. You're quite right, Charles. I remember your saying about old Shakespeare that he was the only one. Him and some Greek chap no one can understand anyway. The rest is a foul, stinking sea of complacent vulgarity. Wilfred felt that. Sometimes I remember he looked so sad after he'd had them laughing themselves sick. Oh, Charles, If only there was a God, but there isn't at all. Perry's big round brown eyes were filling with tears. He fumbled for a handkerchief, then used the tablecloth. After a moment, he added, I wish I'd stayed at Queen's and become a doctor. As it is, I crawl on every day towards the tomb. When I wake in the morning, I think first of death. Do you? No. No. You still have the joie de vivre of a young man. In your case, it is nothing to do with goodness. You are ungood. It is just a natural endowment, a gift of nature, like your figure and your girlish complexion. But remember and beware. There are those who live in hell. I said, Do you ever hit Pamela? Did you ever hit Rosina? I must have been drunker than Perry thought. This question seemed to cheer him up a little. Funny you should ask that, Charles. I was thinking about it just today and wondering why I never do. I never did. No, never raised my hand to anybody. It's the inanimate world that gets it. Glasses, plates, anything I can kick and smash. I think, that's something to do with Ireland. Something I do for Ireland, in a funny way. Doesn't help the bitch, of course. But, as soon as anybody hits anybody, instead of screaming or spitting, there's a barrier passed, perhaps the last barrier of civilization. And after that, it's machine guns and shooting people's kneecaps off. God, why did I agree to play in that bloody TV series? It's muck. They hit me, of course, Pam and Rosina. No inhibitions there. A scratched face? Scratch be damned, they punch. Well, I deserve it. I'm a skunk. Yes. Drink up. As Perry was again applying the tablecloth to his eyes, the door opened and a tall, thin boy with a crew cut and a black leather jacket clumped in, ignored us, went across to the cupboard, opened it, took out a bottle, and walked out again, closing the door. Who on earth was that boy? That's no boy, Charles dear. That's my stepdaughter, Angela. She's 16. God, last time I saw her, she was a little thing with golden ringlets. She is no longer a little thing with golden ringlets. Do you know that she shaved her head last month? Is just beginning to grow again. Her father has given her a motorbike. And when I say motorbike, I don't mean a put on which you sit as on a chair. I mean a long, thick, brutal thing which you bestride like a charger and which makes a noise like arrrrrrr. I remember when you were being sentimental about wanting a son. I told you what hell it would be. I think a daughter is worse. Thank God I haven't got any children of my own. Children. Innocence. God, you should hear the language Angie uses. And she's made herself so ugly, so grotesque. Pamela doesn't care. You saw Pamela just now, didn't you? She did come in, didn't she? Or did I dream it? Angie, yes. She wears climbing boots and leather everything. And she drinks. They all do. Christ, Charles, you're lucky. No family. The family, the seat of love. And to think that I not only persuaded myself I loved those two women, I really did love them. That is, if I'm capable of love. Am I? I don't know. And I loved, earlier, other women, other people. Lost now, lost, gone forever. But it would have been no good. Skunks and rotters and cats can't be happy. So there's some justice in the world after all. I had reached the stage where it was very difficult to leave, very difficult to do anything except go on and on drinking whiskey, and I was beginning to be stupidly affected by Peregrine's tears. Perry, who was your first love? Don't call me Perry, fuck you. Well, I'll tell you, it's not what you... It was my Uncle Peregrine, yes, Uncle Peregrine. God rest his dear soul. He was a good, good man. And if there's ever a judgment day, all my fucking family will be kneeling down behind Uncle Peregrine and hoping that he'll say the good word and save them from the fire. And I'll be lying on the ground waiting for him to raise me up, and he will raise me up. He was a sweet man. I don't know why I'm calling him good. What did I know about it? I was a child. He used to hold my hand and hold me on his knee. He loved me, the bugger. My parents never fondled me. They never hugged me and kissed me. I think honestly they didn't like me much. They liked my bloody sister, not me. But Uncle Peregrine liked me. He used to hug me and kiss me. And do you know, I've never had better kisses from women. Though it wasn't like you think. It was so innocent and sweet. And he only did it when we were alone. That taught me something. I understood. And we talked about everything as if we were the same age. And I longed for his company as if he nourished me. Then one day, my parents must have seen, or maybe they decided there was something funny about Uncle Peregrine, and they just banished him. I never saw him again. Never. What happened to him? I don't know. I heard much later on. I don't know. I heard much later on that he'd committed suicide. When I became an actor, I took his name, partly out of piety, partly to spite my family. I was Christian William. Well, that was my first love. What was yours? I forget. Thank you for telling me about your uncle. I liked hearing about him. I'm sorry I told you already. You'll start making psychology, and psychology is bunk. I know psychology is bunk. I must go, Peregrine. Don't go. I'll tell you Freud's favorite joke, if I can remember it. The king meets his double and says, "Did your mother work in the palace?" And the double says, "No, but my father did." Ha ha ha. That's a good joke. I must go. Charles, you haven't understood the joke. Listen, the king meets his double who looks just like him, and the king says, "I have understood the joke." Charles, for Christ's sake, don't go. There's another bottle. No, but my father did. I really must go. That's right, sod off, just when consciousness is becoming bearable and the light of understanding has dawned. I have got a great deal more to say to you. Oh, all right, sod off then. I think I'll come down to see you at your place by the sea. I'll come at Whitsun if the weather's decent, and we'll get drunk again. Goodbye, Peregrine. I'm sorry about Ireland. You're drunk after all. Fuck off. As I went out of the door, I heard him murmuring, "So clean, so bloody clean," as his head slowly dropped towards the wine-stained tablecloth.